So good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you to the May 16th, 2023 public hearing of the Commissioner's proposed budget for FY24. So before we get into the evening, I do want to make a few comments. This budget is a little unusual. That we've had some things happen this year that are unique. Our two largest energy partners in Calvert County, their pilots ran out, so we are still working through what that revenue stream looks like. And for any of you that work on a budget, when you're not sure what your revenue stream is, that can create some contention. We also had the superintendent come in and ask us for $24 million for the school system for next year, which is unprecedented. And so working through all those issues, tonight our budget is not where we wished it was, but I think in the next 7 to 10 days, we should have a much clearer picture on what our revenue stream is going to look like. And I want to thank the superintendent. Had a awards ceremony tonight. He said he'd be a little late, but I'll take this opportunity now, maybe again later. I do want to thank Superintendent Townsend and Mr. Johnson, Scott Johnson, from the school system for all their hard work. We've met several times, working through the budget, answering questions, trying to figure a path forward. And I think that we've settled on about $13.5 million for the school system. And that will give all of the employees a 3% pay raise and a step. And I have promised the superintendent had asked for a 5.5% pay raise in 2 increments for all employees. And what I promised the superintendent is that in December, when we're midway through this year, we would take another look at our budget and see how we can get him to where he needs to be. Everybody knows about Blueprint and the requirements of Blueprint. And so we are going to meet our obligations for Blueprint. We just want to make sure that we're on the right and clear path. And I think the superintendent and Mr. Johnson are in agreement. And so what you see tonight may not be what you'd like to see, but I think we are going to do our best to get you there before we get too far along into FY24. So that's all I'm going to say for now, and at this time I'll turn it over to Director Strands.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. Again, just to reiterate what Commissioner Hans said, that yes, tonight we will be presenting the fiscal year 2024 Commissioner's budget. And on next Tuesday, we will be coming back during open session during the day, seeking the board's direction on items to be included into the adopted budget. So now I'll turn it over to Dawn to start our presentation.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners, and welcome staff and citizens. I am Dawn Wood, Budget Officer for Calvert County Government. This evening, staff will be presenting the fiscal year 2024 Commissioner's budget, which is the second budget in the budget process. After the presentation of the Commissioner's budget, the Commissioners will provide guidance to staff on changes to be made for incorporation into the adopted budget. The adopted budget is the third and final book in the production process. This is the agenda for the evening. This is a public hearing. This public hearing is required by the Calvert County Code of Public Local Laws. This hearing has been duly advertised, and there is a certification of publication in our files that constitute the record of this hearing. The county has adopted guidelines for conducting public hearings as detailed in Resolution 6-89. If you are speaking as an individual, there is a 2-minute time limit. If you are the designated representative of an organization, you will be allowed 5 minutes. If you would like to sign up to speak, there is a sign-up sheet outside of each courtroom. Speakers from the main BOCC courtroom will speak first, followed by overflow courtrooms number 1, number 4, and number 3, respectively. If you are watching and listening on the county website and wish to comment via telephone, there are instructions on the homepage. You will be called on after the in-person comments are finished. The constant yield tax rate is the tax rate a jurisdiction would need to impose to generate the same amount of property tax revenue in the upcoming fiscal year FY 2024 as it did in the current year FY 23. Those two rates are different because of changes in property assessments. To help provide an understanding of the constant yield tax rate, I will repeat the explanation. The constant yield tax rate is the tax rate a jurisdiction would need to impose to generate the same amount of property tax revenue in the upcoming fiscal year FY 2024 as it did in the current year FY 23. Those two rates are different because of changes in property assessments. In a rising or increasing assessment environment, we would have to lower our property tax rate to keep our property tax income and county revenues the same. This portion of our hearing is required by the state of Maryland. If you live in Chesapeake Beach or North Beach, you have different tax rates because the commissioners acknowledge the town taxes that are paid and the services that are provided by the towns by this lower rate. The commissioners set a differential amount. It is .336. You can see that difference between the county's proposed rate of .927 and the .591 proposed rate for the towns. As noted in the slide, this budget was prepared using the proposed rate, which is the same rate that was adopted in FY 2023. First item on tonight's agenda is the Board of County Commissioner President, Commissioner Hans.
Did you have anything else that you would like to add at this time? I know you started it, so. Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'm Sharon Strand, the Director of Finance and Budget. Tonight I will be presenting the general fund revenues for fiscal year 2024 and our revenue projections for fiscal year 25 through 28. The general fund is the primary fund and is for the government and is used to record inflows, which are revenues, and outflows of resources, which are expenditures. In this fund, we collect property taxes, income taxes, and account for money that was collected. This budget presents a flat tax rate, as mentioned earlier. We also use this fund for education, mainly the public schools, but also for the College of Southern Maryland. For public safety, the Sheriff's Office, the Detention Center, the 911 Center, and Career EMS. These are just some of the many parts that help keep Calvert County safe. For roads, Public Works maintains about 470 miles of county roads. For the community, there are libraries, senior centers, parks, museums, and other services. This slide represents the general fund forecast. It is taking into consideration in the first column fiscal year 2023 of the adopted budget, and that what we're currently projecting for fiscal year 24, and then the future years 25 through 28. As you will see in fiscal year 2024, we still have two line items under the revenue section, which is use of prior year fund balance. In the staff recommended budget, this number was about $41 million. We are now at, we've now been able to lower that rate. Currently, we do not use fund balance to fund ongoing operations for the general fund. So the $17.9 million is what we'll be looking at to come up with another funding source. The second line item on the use of prior year fund balance is PAYGO. We are allowed to use that use of prior year fund balance for CIP one-time purchases. So that number equals the capital project and the general fund transfer in the expenditure section. Again, staff will work with the Board of County Commissioners for a solution in order to fund that $17.9 million that technically is a deficit right now. Another item to point out is that in fiscal year 2023, we end the pilot program for Exelon and Dominion. And then the Dominion will go to a tax credit, so they will receive a 42% tax credit based on assessment, and the county will collect 58% of that. We don't have a true identified impact of that yet, but we are working with the county administrator's office and consultants on trying to determine that figure. So here's another, how do we plan for everything that's been happening over the last several years? The inflation and interest rates tend to move in the same direction because interest rates are the primary tool used by the Federal Reserve to manage inflation. Since March of 2022, the Federal Reserve has increased interest rates eight times, equaling a total rate change of 4.5%. This impacts the movement of real estate sales, thus reducing recordation tax. On the other side of that, the county has seen an increase in real estate tax assessments, which will help offset this impact. Also, many businesses and individuals benefited from the federal stimulus, which increased their wages. During the past 2 years, the county has seen a large increase in income tax revenue. In fiscal year 2022, the county received $115.3 million in income tax revenue, and that was shown on the prior slide. Also, I just we're also seeing a decline in the income tax due to the stimulus money slowing down and stopping. So that will affect our future projections in the income tax category. Again, the above areas we will be reevaluating, and staff will continue to monitor as we move forward towards the adopted budget. On this chart, it's just breaking down the main categories of revenue. Right now, the general fund revenues are at $367 million. I wish 367,000. $367,066,318. Right now, property taxes represents about 53%. Use of prior year fund balance is 10%. Income tax is about 30%, and other taxes and revenues is about 7.3%. Again, just wanted to reiterate the box in the bottom, the use of prior year fund balance. It's the $17.9 million that staff will be working with the county commissioners going forward to the adopted budget in order to bring that number down to zero, as we cannot fund ongoing operations with use of prior year fund balance. This slide reflects the income tax, and you can see from 2015 all the way to 2022, and those are fiscal years on how we peaked at $115.3 million. In FY23, we projected a decrease of to 106, and now we're projecting a slight increase over 23 of 109. We're still receiving positive feedback from the state that income tax is strong. And remember, the income tax comes from the 41,000 roughly tax returns that are filed by our residents to the state and then distributed to the county. This next chart is showing how the Dominion Cove Point is impacting and has impacted our budget since fiscal year 2020. In reviewing the chart, you can see that Dominion is significantly decreasing in fiscal year 2024 by about $8.8 million. Again, just wanted to mention that the pilot program does end on June 30th of this year. And it will be going to a tax credit in fiscal year 2024. Again, we are conservative with these numbers, and we will be working with the county administrator's office and our consultants on trying to determine the correct assessment and calculation for this line item within our budget for '24. This graph depicts the change year over year of our revenue. And you can see it has been going up slightly over the years from 18 to 22. And then in '23, we see a big decline of 11.5 million. And that's mostly related to income tax. And now we do see another decline of 11.5 million in the commissioner's budget. And 8.8 of that is related to the Dominion change from the pilot to the tax credit program. Next up, I'll let Beth introduce herself, but she'll be covering the general fund expenditures.
Thanks, Sharon. Good evening. I'm Beth Richmond, Deputy Director of Finance and Budget. Sharon spoke to you about general fund revenues, and I will speak to you about general fund expenditures. Here is a visual representation of the general fund expenditures. For every dollar the county spends out of the general fund, 40 cents goes to public schools. 34 cents is spent on operating expenses. 12 cents is for pensions, insurance, and debt service associated with capital improvements. Then the remaining 14 cents covers transfers to other county funds and other agencies. For example, the libraries, Calvert Marine Museum, and the non-debt portion of the capital improvement plan, or CIP, and that's just to name a few. The general fund expenditures increased $25 million over the adopted budget for last year. I will walk you through the top 5 major changes, starting with the largest and moving down. First, the Commissioner's budget includes an increase of $21.5 million for transfers. The majority of that increase is $18.6 million for CIP. In FY23, there wasn't a general fund contribution to CIP. If you compare FY24 recommended funding to the adopted funding for '22, the increase is $8 million, and 7 of the $8 million is for paving. Next, we have technology services with an increase of $1.5 million, which includes funding for post-production support for Workday. Third on the list is the Sheriff's Office. There is a step and a cost of living adjustment in this budget. The Sheriff's Office has the most employees, so it makes sense that they would see a large increase in salary expense. In addition, a larger number of vehicles are on the FY24 replacement schedule as compared to FY23. Next, we have Career EMS with an increase of $1.3 million. In our continued effort to ensure our citizens continue to get the medical help they need, we continue to expand our staff to support our amazing volunteers by adding 4 new positions. The final item is health insurance, which is due to an increase in premiums. The next area I would like to discuss is the changes from the staff recommended budget that we presented in March to the Commissioner's budget being presented here tonight. For both revenues and expenditures, we revised and refined our estimates based on current information. We reduced the COLA for county staff, and this had a ripple impact on payroll taxes. We also adjusted our insurance premiums based on the actual rates received from our insurance providers. We just reviewed the changes from the staff recommended budget to the Commissioner's budget. On this slide, we will review the known changes that will be reflected in the adopted budget. After recent meetings that Commissioner Hand spoke about with the BOE superintendent and staff that included discussions on their operating budget, the BOCC has decided to fund the BOE at $154.7 million for FY24. This is $13.4 million over last year's funding. The BOCC has also decided to award another position at the state's attorney's office. As Sharon mentioned, there will be a staff presentation to the BOCC on May the 23rd, during which the BOCC will direct staff on what they want included in the FY24 adopted budget. The Board of County Commissioners will vote on the adopted budget on Tuesday, June the 6th. That completes the review of the general fund. I will now turn things over to Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning.
evening. I'm Mary Beth Cook, Director of Planning and Zoning, and I will be presenting proposed changes to our fee schedule for both planning and zoning, including inspections and permits. Fees are collected for plan review, permits, and inspections to offset staff time and county resources expended in order to provide a fiscal benefit to the county. Applicants pay for the services they are receiving. Fees that need to be updated are identified each year and adopted through the budget process. The current fees were adopted with the FY23 budget and became effective on July 1st, 2022. The proposed fees are being revised to include architectural review. Next slide, please. Architectural review, which is required by the Calvert County zoning ordinance and 7 town center zoning ordinances. In the critical area, we're proposing to increase planting and bond fees to reflect the actual cost of plants and labor to install them, because if someone defaults on a bond, the county's responsible by law to do that planting. We're also proposing to increase after-the-fact violation fees. Applicants who apply for and receive permits will therefore pay a lower fee. We're proposing a rerouting fee, which is a new fee for rerouting permits which need to be updated for review and approval stamps to remain valid. Other minor changes are also proposed for better organization and clarification and to be in line with our upgraded permit tracking system. A list of all fees, including the proposed updates, are in the FY24 budget in the fees and tax rates appendix, and if approved, will become effective July 1st, 2024. That concludes my presentation on the fees, and I'll turn it over to Rachel.
Good evening. I'm Rachel Griffith, Fiscal Officer, and I'm going to present the budgets for the Water and Sewer and Solid Waste and Recycling funds. These two funds are enterprise funds, which mean they are run like a business and are expected to pay for their own operations. These funds operate on revenues earned by charging fees to their customers. Water and Sewer charges capital connection fees and user fees, while Solid Waste and Recycling charges tip fees, excise taxes, and solid waste fees. Both enterprise funds will be using prior year fund balance as a placeholder to balance their funds and are working on reducing this. Water and Sewer serves the major town centers in Prince Frederick and Solomons, as well as many smaller communities throughout the county. There are 19 water systems and 5 wastewater systems. The Water and Sewer Fund Summary Budget is shown on the screen. This budget is based on the rates currently in effect. The budget increased by less than 9% over fiscal year 2023, or $1,149,571. $500,000 of the increase is a result of a contract coming in much higher than expected. For revenue, charges for services increased by 6.08%. This is due to the completion of the countywide meter replacement project. We now have better consumption estimates as the basis for our revenue projections. Revenue from capital connections is forecasted to slightly decrease in fiscal year 2024. For expenses, the 33.26% increase is mainly due to the higher contract, as I already stated. Next slide. The Solid Waste and Recycling Fund is used to run the county landfill at Appeal and the 6 resident convenience centers or compactor sites. This fund's budget is increasing by just over 7%, or $1,127,181. This increase is for salary and benefits along with operating and capital outlay items. The revenue increased slightly due to the CPI increase to the solid waste fees, which I'll discuss on the next slide. This slide is intended to cover the planned increases in the solid waste fee structure. With this commissioner's budget, tip fees for residential and commercial customers have increased in the solid waste fee, as stated in the prior recommended budget presentation. The tipping fees for residential increased to $80.26 and commercial increased to $89.17. And as discussed with the recommended budget, the solid waste fees increased $3 per user to $154. This fee is charged to the county businesses and residents and supports fund improvements to the recycling program. This fee appears on the county residents' tax bill. To make the public aware, fees can be increased during the fiscal year with the Board of County Commissioners' approval after a public hearing is conducted. Next, we have Veronica Atkinson and Scott Johnson.
Good evening. I'm Veronica Atkinson, the Capital Projects Analyst. My first slide is an overview of the Commissioner's Budget 6-Year Capital Improvement Plan, or CIP. This table reflects a breakdown of the 6-year expenses by functional department. Each of the departments are listed to the far left of the table, with each year's expenses following towards the right. The total expenses for the 6-year CIP is $508,818,095. Even though the CIP covers a period of 6 years, only the first year of the CIP, FY24 highlighted here in yellow, is adopted or funded by the board. The remaining 5 years are used for financial planning. This table focuses on the FY24 CIP expenditures and revenues. The column to the far left details each functional department, and the column in yellow represents their total requested expenses. To the right of the total expenses is a breakdown of the revenues. This shows how each functional department plans to pay for projects during FY24. As Sharon stated earlier in the presentation, the CIP's PAYGO account, a total of $18,623,261, will be funded by prior year fund balance in FY24. The total FY24 general fund, which is the top portion of the table, is $70,942,241. Below the general fund is the enterprise funds. This table reflects funding sources the enterprise funds will use to pay for their projects. Their FY24 total is approximately $19 million. As Rachel explained, the enterprise funds are self-supporting funds. The revenues are based upon the projected fees that will be received from the users of the water, sewer, and solid waste. The total for the FY24 Commissioner's budget for capital improvements, or CIP, is $89,960,241. This concludes Finance and Budget's presentation. Our next presenter is with Calvert County Schools.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Scott Johnson, Chief Financial Officer for Calvert County Public Schools. Thank you for the opportunity to meet with you, and thank you, Chairman Hance and other members of the Commission, for the opportunity to collaborate on some of the budget challenges that we've experienced this year due largely to the blueprint. Because Dr. Townsell has presented this presentation before, I'll just emphasize some of the high points of the presentation. Some of the guiding principles and parameters for development of the budget, of course, include providing a safe environment for students and staff and maximizing educational opportunities for our students. And of course, we need to and are working strongly or hard to fulfill local, state, and federal government requirements, including the blueprint requirements. Also, we are working on honoring the current collective bargaining agreements and memorandum of understanding, and importantly, providing excellent fiscal stewardship to Calvert County Public School taxpayers. This table shows a summary of our revenue sources, and two largest sources include the state revenue, state aid, and county appropriations. We've since reduced our request on the county appropriations to approximately $21.9 million. This year's larger than usual budget request is due largely to blueprint-related costs. The next slide shows the same table along with a pie graph that makes it easy to see the primary budgetary sources for revenue. And the next slide shows the major cost increases for next fiscal year. Almost half the increases are related to blueprint-related costs, and fixed costs, meaning primarily employee benefits, mandated employee benefits that go with those blueprint-related costs, and negotiated increases. We also have special education cost increases and a significant continuing increase in student transportation costs, of approximately $1.5 million. In the next slide, you see the big story for Calvert County Public Schools and for many public school districts across the state is the blueprint for education and a number of changes that are pretty significant cost-wise for school districts. The next slide will show some of the changes required by the blueprint from the Kerwin legislation, including a 10% increase in teacher salaries between fiscal year 19 and fiscal year 24. And the budget does include an increase of 1%, which was previously negotiated, and two 5.5% or a 5.5% increase that is split into two start dates in the next fiscal year. The budget also includes what's called a career ladder for teachers. Actually, I misspoke. We have what's called an NBC, or National Board Certification stipends that are required for the blueprint. And we have some stipends budgeted for this next fiscal year. We'll be paying some this fiscal year. And then we'll be implementing, because of blueprint, a new career ladder by fiscal year 25. And then another requirement of the blueprint is that the starting teacher salary must be at least $60,000 by fiscal year 27. And there are a number of other blueprint requirements too. Those are some of the key ones. I'd be happy to respond to any questions you may have.
All right. So this concludes the presentation from Finance and Budget regarding the fiscal year 2024 Commissioner's budget. I'll now open the floor for public comment. Again, the public comment will start with in-person, and then we will go to virtual callers. John, would you like to read?
The floor has been open for public comment at this hearing. Resolution 6-89 was adopted and is available here today to maintain the order and decorum of the governmental process. Those attending in person will be invited to speak first, then those joining virtually. Those joining virtually, if you wish to speak, please press *9 or use the raise your hand function. Virtual participants will be identified by their screen name or the last four digits of their phone number and unmuted one at a time. Speakers will be asked to state their name and address. Speakers who are providing comment as individuals will be allocated 2 minutes. Speakers who are the designated representative of a group will be allocated 5.
Thank you. All right, so the first in-person speaker I have is Pat Nutter, and he is signed up as a designated speaker for H.E. Brown.
Commissioners, thank you for having me here tonight. I just want to tell you that I just think you do a wonderful job. It's a hard job. And coming down here, anyways, I'm Pat Nutter, 7110 Bluegrass Way, Owings. And I'm just an old farm boy. Millie said, please tell me you're not going to go down there dressed like that. And I said, yeah. So, but anyhow, listen, it's hard for me to come and speak to you about a subject when one side of me is thinking like a county commissioner and the other side of me is thinking like a citizen. Because, you know, we're not a bedroom community anymore. We're closer to a suburban community. And what happens and what that means is there's more responsibility that falls on the local governments and the local citizens. And that responsibility is one of the reasons I'm here. About 7 years ago, when I was commissioner, I think it was my first term, I was asked to serve on a commission for Harriet Elizabeth Brown. Now, if you don't know who Harriet Elizabeth Brown is, please catch up on history. Very important. And I tell you how many people I've had to say, Harriet Elizabeth Brown represented this. And many of them were students, some teachers, that just didn't keep up with the history of Harriet Elizabeth Brown. Now, that's one segment. And the other segment is everybody knows Guthrie Smith. He's front line in this county for helping our young children, our young adults. And for years, he set about trying to come up with a recreational decision, a recreational facility. And during my time as commissioner, Southern Maryland Electric Building came up, and we bought that. We said, okay, we'll use this for a while as a community center. But it was pretty cut up in there. But then we merged that with Harriet Elizabeth Brown, because one day we said, well, what are we going to name that building? And I said, well, why don't we name it after Harriet Elizabeth Brown, who is just a historical person in this county. I don't think she gets enough representation from I think the news and people like that. So I'm not going to go into that, and I want to thank you for all the funding that you advanced. But here's what I'm afraid of. A year to me, at my age, is precious, okay? And I guess thanks that I've lived this long, and I'm in pretty good shape, play a lot of music. But I was hoping to see a shovel of dirt thrown for that building before they threw it on me. And, and I know what you're facing as a former county commissioner, and even the schools. I know what you're facing. And I don't think it's going to get any better. But I would like to see at some point, not 2029, that's too far for me. And, it's not that I'm not optimistic, I'm just natural. I know what happens. So please, at least shovel some dirt and say, okay, this is where it's going to be. May not be there next year, but please think about it, okay? Because, Lord, otherwise I'll be back here next year. And I got to hold on to this mic to keep my balance, because usually I have a guitar in my hand. So, but I do want to thank you. And again, I think you do a hard job. If it was easy, anybody would do it. So keep up the good work. Remember that shovel. Boy, don't be coming to see me now when they throw a shovel on me.
Next up is Michelle Parrott, speaking as an individual.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'm here tonight. First, actually, before I read what I prepared, I want to thank you all, and also Dr. Townsend and Mr. Johnson, for continuing to work for the school system and their budget. I am the school nurse at Barstow Elementary, as well as the case building rep for both Barstow and the nurses. I'm not only here tonight to hear your budget proposal and to urge you to consider equally funding an increase for Calvert County's amazing support staff, but to give you information to take forward to those who will listen in state government. State employees received a 4.5% COLA last year. While we contribute to the state's pension system, we are not considered state employees. Calvert County employees received a generous increase in salaries last year, but we are also not considered Calvert County employees. Our funding comes from both state and local entities, but we permanently reside in some gray area in between. The school systems seem to be in a never-ending tug-of-war between our local and state governments when it comes to funding. This is why you've seen such a tremendous turnout at your recent meetings. It's time for us to fight for what we deserve. The blueprint is looking out for the state's teachers and increasing their starting wage and giving them a 10% increase in pay over the 23-24 school year. While teachers are the foundation of our education system, your schools could not open their doors and operate without your support staff. While we may have different job descriptions, we are all part of one team that educates and protects the health and well-being of the county's children. I am asking that you please make sure the employees of Calvert County Public Schools, including administrators, teachers, and support staff, are treated equally and fairly. Thank you for your time.
Next up is Amy Cox, speaking as an individual.
My name is Amy Cox. As a teacher and parent in Calvert County Public Schools, I was extremely concerned when the county commissioners proposed a flat funding for the BOE budget. I wanted to remind everybody that within the past 3 years, this would have been the second time we were flat funded. In fiscal year 2022, our previous superintendent only asked for a $1 increase. So with rapid inflation, CCPS has virtually been operating with the same budget for the last few years. The commissioners inferred that flat funding would have been okay, not an issue because of projected decrease in enrollment estimated at 520 students. However, this isn't a steep increase, as some of you would believe. Let's break it down this way. If you take 520 students and divide by 25 schools in Calvert County, that's an average decrease of 21 students per school. If that's an elementary school and all one grade level, I can see losing a teacher and an instructional assistant, perhaps. But not all student decrease will be from one grade level. If you divide by the number of grade levels in the elementary school, which is 6, then the decrease is 3.5 students per grade. What teacher and/or IA do you not replace? A third grade teacher or a kindergarten teacher? So instead of having 4 teachers per grade team with 27 students each, you'd have 3 teachers with 33 students per classroom. CCPS may not need to lay off staff due to the $14 million increase, but they might not be able to replace the staff that retire or transfer due to the budget shortfall that BOE asked for. Instead of hiring a new computer science teacher at the high school to replace the one retiring, other teachers will pick up his classes. That means that English classes will be larger because instead of teaching English a couple of periods, an English teacher will be teaching computer science. Is that my time? Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Saban Tedston.
I don't need to speak anymore. Thank you.
Next person is Amy Hamilton, speaking as an individual.
Hi. I am a parent of a 7th grader, a college freshman who graduated from Calvert High last year. I'm also a teacher, teach 7th grade math and 8th grade math. So I've done a lot of computing while we've been speaking. I'm a little concerned because even my students realize that 10 minus the 4.5 that we have projected for the COLA doesn't reach that 10% that we need. You say that you're going to give us to us, but I'm very concerned because as we all know, budgets get passed and then maybe we get additional funding. And even that you're not sure where that's coming from. So I am very concerned. Transportation costs we know have definitely risen. How can you not increase based on the fuel costs alone? Even your employees said that there's a 7% increase for county trash, but we didn't give transportation increases for diesel fuel, which is definitely going up. We have to hit that $60,000 beginning salary by 2026. We're just not going to make that mark. If you give us nothing this year, that means next year we have to ask for even more. We can't keep pushing it off. That'd be like saying to Public Works, hey, there's an accident every day at this intersection at 3 o'clock, but maybe next year we'll look into it. That's just not acceptable. I can't do that in my classroom. I can't say, well, maybe I'll grade your test next quarter. Next year, our budgets will be our teacher salaries. Beginning teacher salary comes straight out of college, 28% behind Charles County, 25% behind PG, 22% behind Anne Arundel, and 13% behind St. Mary's County. I have veteran teachers in my building wondering if they should move back because they could earn a higher salary other places. Anne Arundel's superintendent just announced a $1,000 bonus for every employee, and he said this: "The facts are that the people on our team are doing incredible work while facing significant challenges. They're doing additional work because of shortages, dealing with increased requirements, and to be honest, facing an increase in unacceptable confrontations from students and families." I heard that the timer just went off, but I don't understand how we can do 23% less tax on businesses than we do personal property taxes. I understand we want to keep Calvert small, but we can't keep it small and then expect everything else to go up. You're going to either have to increase taxes on personal citizens or bring in more businesses. I would have loved to see a Target instead of a Planet Fitness. Everybody goes out of the county for shopping, for appliances. We don't stay in county for any of that. All that money leaves the county. Thanks.
Next up is Linda Hampshire, and speaking as an individual.
Good evening. My name is Linda Hampshire. I am a teacher at Plum Point Middle School. Thank you for allowing me the opportunity to speak with you today. My passion for education and students has allowed me to enjoy a fulfilling 32-year career for the Calvert County Public Schools. State legislatures passed a reformative education bill designed to overhaul the education system to meet the demands of the 21st century workforce and beyond. Part of this legislation requires local governments to provide adequate funding and to ensure the implementation of each pillar of the blueprint, which includes raising teacher salaries by 10% to make it equitable with other highly trained professionals. We need to have targeted investment in schools to implement the blueprint, but this government is considering starving our education system through its funding of the budget. Teachers are constantly being asked to do more with less. Students fall behind in reading, writing, and math because this school system cannot retain teachers nor have additional resources to meet their needs. Between retirements, resignations, and leave of absence, there are already 99 fewer teachers to meet the staffing requirements for next year. Calvert County Public Schools has waited until the last minute to meet many of the mandates of the blueprint. The blueprint requires that a 10% increase over the negotiated schedule of wages be implemented. Step increases are not included in this amount. This must be funded through cost of living adjustments. Restorative steps increases do not count, which had been present for 4 years of the past 2 contracts. As other counties were funding amounts to set their teachers ahead, we were digging ourselves out of a hole. To date, a total of 3.5% of wage increases have been implemented. Since 2019, the Calvert County Commissioners have funded 2% of COLAs, 1% in fiscal year 20 and 1% in fiscal year 23. A 3% increase simply doesn't meet the mandate that must go into effect by next summer. CCPS has waited until the last minute to meet this mandate, rather than smooth costs over several years. Teachers and students should not have to pay for this mismanagement. Thank you.
Next up is Donna Koch on Stenso, speaking as a designated speaker from CEA.
Good evening. My name is Donna Ostenso. I am the president of the Calvert Education Association, a proud public school teacher and advocate for public education. 35 years ago, Calvert County was the place to teach. We had one of the top teaching salaries in the state. We did not really have to recruit. Teachers came to us. We could hire the best of the best. We did not have to worry about retention because once you were fortunate enough to be hired by Calvert County Public Schools, you did not leave. There was no teacher shortage. Teaching was a profession that was honored and respected in our community, our state, and our country. Let me fast forward to 2022-2023. There is a national teacher shortage. Calvert County no longer has one of the top starting teacher salaries in the state. According to MSDE, Calvert is currently ranked 14th out of 24 in the state. Amongst our neighboring counties in FY23, Calvert teachers received the lowest COLA and are projected to still receive the lowest in FY24 based upon the Board of County Commissioners' current proposal of a 3% COLA. Compared to our 4 neighboring counties, next year Calvert County will have the lowest starting salary for a teacher with a bachelor's degree and have next to the lowest starting salary for a teacher with a bachelor's degree and a standard professional certificate. We no longer have applicants coming to us. We must recruit. But from where? According to a recent article in the Washington Post dated May 14, 2023, in the 2018-2019 school year, colleges and universities awarded about 90,000 undergraduate education degrees, compared to over 200,000 in the early 1970s. We must also worry about retention. If we cannot attract teachers, then we must retain the teachers that we have. Since October of this school year, CCPS has had 18 leave of absences, 48 resignations, and 33 retirements. Again, who will we hire to replace these teachers? It does not matter if these numbers are the same as in other parts of the state. High teacher turnover consumes economic resources that could be better deployed elsewhere. I could stand up here and tell you all the reasons that my profession is no longer the chosen one, but that's a conversation for another day. People move to Calvert County because of its proximity to Andrews, Pax River, DC, and most of all for our public school system. 96% of all K-12 students in Calvert County are educated in public schools, compared to the Maryland state average of 86%. Schools in Calvert County have an average ranking of an 8 out of 10, which is in the top 30% of Maryland public schools. Teachers and support staff matter more for student achievement than any other aspect of schooling. We need you to fund the budget so that CCPS can recruit and retain the highest caliber of workforce for our children. Education funding is an important investment in all of our futures. Thank you. And I do want to acknowledge and thank President Hance for his opening remarks this evening. So, thank you.
Next up is Betty Goldstein, speaking as an individual.
Good evening, Commissioners. I'd like to begin by saying how refreshing it is to see you hold an evening meeting that allows those working traditional workday hours the option to attend. I'd love to see this on a more regular basis, such as once or twice a month. I'm obviously teaching, so I have to watch your meetings later. I'm here this evening to share my concerns over the funding suggested for Calvert County Public Schools. It is the school system that draws people to move to Calvert County. While employees may not leave CCPS at a higher rate than other districts, this is a problem everywhere. It makes me wonder, why wait for things to get worse if we can't fill vacancies across the board? Do you realize there is a shortage of teachers across all systems? CCPS is not at 100% employment. We not only have provisional teachers, but also long-term substitutes serving as teachers, and at least one teacher position not filled by anyone at all. Other teachers had to take that over and make larger classes. Teachers are a critical component of student success. I looked at the numbers for leave of absence, retirements, and resignations for March, April, and May of 2022 versus March, April, and May of 2023. This year, there are 9 more leave of absences, 3 more retirements, and 9 more resignations. The thing is, they aren't the last. More teachers will be leaving, and many are already actively looking at other employment opportunities, or actually have other employment, but they're waiting to declare their resignation. I've had more than one teacher leaving the system say the same thing to me about how everything good about schools is accomplished on the backs of staff. Frankly, I'm giving serious consideration to removing anything not provided by CCPS from my classroom and encouraging others to follow suit so the public can finally see the difference between a government-funded classroom versus a teacher-funded. The blueprint was not a surprise. I hear you plan to meet the blueprint, but I'm not hearing how or when. And if children are truly important, don't we want the best? The best includes having the best people working in all facets of the school system. Our schools do not run without our support staff. They are the backbone of our system, and they need to be paid a living wage. I throw this in because it's not mandated by the blueprint, but it still needs to happen.
Next up is Terrell Harris, speaking as an individual.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Terrell Harris, 210 Westlake Boulevard, Prince Frederick, Maryland. I come to you to thank you for, I saw that the Dunkirk Skate Park was put onto the CIP, so I want to thank you for that. As a skateboarder for 20 years now, we've been asking for lights my entire career in that skate park. So to see that you guys finally put a plan on paper to put lights in the skate park is amazing to me. I also want to thank you for the recent Dunkirk Skate Park attention. It was recently resealed, though I don't think it did much. It didn't improve the ground much, but I wish that funding would have gone towards just rebuilding the whole skate park. I do appreciate the attention that you guys have given the skate park thus far. I came here to ask you if we could bump up the skate park's timeline. Right now, it's currently scheduled for fiscal year 28 planning and fiscal year 29 construction. That's 5 years out. I know it's a lot of important things, but I think it'd be great if we could just bump that up a couple of years. And just having speaking to the skate park community as a wish list item, I would love to see a skate park in the southern end of the county. Right now, anyone who lives in Lusby, they're probably not making it to Dunkirk. It's just too far. You know, these are for the kids, so they don't have cars to drive up there. I would love to see a skate park down maybe Code Point at the dirt facility that the Dominion was using, or at Code Point itself. But that's all. Thank you.
Next up is Ted Blankenbaker, speaking as an individual.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ted Blankenbaker. I'm joined here today by my colleagues Ryan Gebhardt and Terrell Harris. Together, we are the Calvert chapter of the Southern Maryland Skateboard Association and are advocating for an overhaul of Dunkirk Skate Park. While we appreciate the planning of renovations in the future, fiscal year 2028-2029 is too far to address the current state of the park. We petitioned and received over 1,200 signatures, many commenting how rough the pavement is. Rough surfaces and warping, uneven ramps create an unsafe environment for beginner and experienced skaters alike. While we appreciate the seal coating done last November, it hasn't solved the issues at hand, and we would like to see a tear out of the existing facility and installation of a modern concrete park. 1 out of 10 prefabricated parks like Dunkirk are closed after 7 years of operation, either due to disrepair, lack of use, or natural events. Concrete skate parks are able to operate well over 20 years with minimal upkeep and would be the best long-term bang for your buck option. I petitioned with my mother over 20 years ago for lights, and while I'm happy to see that's also being planned, I think it would be a poor use of funds to illuminate a facility which will not see use. Instead, said funding should be grouped together with the existing budget for an even better facility. Thank you for your time, Commissioners. We look forward to working with you in the county in the future.
Next up is Ryan, and I'm sorry I can't read your last name, at 5886 Calvert Boulevard. He is speaking as an individual.
Thank you. It's Ryan Gebhardt. Thank you so much. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Ryan Gebhardt. I'm a Calvert County resident of over 10 years. I'm currently residing in St. Leonard. As my friends Ted and Terrell mentioned, we appreciate the Calvert County Parks and Recreation have taken action already to try to enhance the safety of Dunkirk Skate Park. But as it stands, many of the concerns that we brought forward to Parks and Recreation have not been addressed. The park still consists of large, slippery ramps, sending skaters at high speeds into rough, poorly maintained asphalt. Some ramps have received repairs to the transitions from metal to asphalt, while others have not. Large veins of unflattened crack filler run throughout the skate park, and skaters leave with their boards and shoes stained with black from the sealer that has had a hard time drying. I don't think it's realistic to leave the skate park in its current state for another 5 years, and attempting another repair at this point would only serve to waste time and money. I appreciate this opportunity to share our concerns with you, and we would like you to know that we're available anytime to discuss this. Thank you for your time, and please be on the lookout for a follow-up email with more information. Also, as a St. Leonard resident, I want to back him up on that. We would love a skate park down south. Dominion Energy would be a great place. Thank you so much.
Next up is Beverly Rasmussen. It has both checked, but I imagine she's speaking as a designated speaker from SMART.
That's correct. Thank you. Beverly Rasmussen, I am a resident of, Calvert County, 9631 Ridgeview Drive in Owings. I'm here speaking for the Southern Maryland Association and the residents and your constituents and the consumers of Calvert County. The Southern Maryland Association of Realtors opposes the proposed increase of the property taxes coming before you, which would raise the property taxes significantly. SMAR believes local governments should fund from their existing property and income tax bases for the necessary public facilities, such as the schools, water and sewer, transportation, public safety, and others, at a rate that keeps up with the population growth. We're not doing that. This deviation from constant yield, which amounts to a hefty tax increase on the homeowners, can easily be avoided while not disrupting the county's finances. As you are aware, the property taxes and other taxes on real estate make up a very large share of all tax revenue collected in Calvert County. Those taxes accounted for approximately 53% this past year of the county's budget. Coupled with the fact that over the last year, home values have grown at an unhealthy pace, a severe housing shortage inventory that plagues both the county and the country has created extreme hurdles for potential homeowners. A survey by the American Strategies conducted earlier this year found that 76% of Maryland voters think the cost to buy and own a home in Maryland is too high, with roughly 1 out of every 3 consumers saying that they are considering leaving the state due to high housing costs. You're going to lose a lot more tax base, even though with the value of the properties that have increased over this past year and are still increasing, causing an additional problem with having inventory available for the consumers and your children, my great-grandchildren, to be able to live in this county. The tax base, the value, if you use your current tax yield, will increase automatically, and you won't lose the taxes. You won't have to increase the taxes because the value of the taxes based on the assessment values are going up. So you're going to make that tax base anyway. Additional taxes and government-imposed costs have raised the cost of owning a home, specifically burdening longtime county residents and older homeowners on fixed income. Me. Calvert County is now faced with an opportunity to help remove one added barrier to homeownership by enacting the proposed constant yield and keeping it lower, so that at the new rate even, so that you basing it on the new assessed value rather than increasing taxes themselves. I can anticipate and almost guarantee you that the 53% that you had last year is going to go up this year. So you're going to get more than from your real estate taxes than what you're anticipating. Maintaining the lower tax level for your constituents while not disrupting the county's budget is fair for everyone in the county. We understand how expensive it can be to maintain the growth in the county. We want to see the county continue to grow smartly and responsibly, with appropriately supported facilities for all residents. However, adding greater taxes at a time when the economy is already stressed will only hurt the county more. We ask that you maintain constant yield rates based on the higher assessed values and save homeowners from an even greater tax burden than they are already facing when funding such a large part of the county budget. Thank you. The association is here to talk with you anytime you want to discuss additional figures, because we've got them already prepared.
Next up is Bob Estes, speaking as an individual. Next up is Susan E. Shaw, speaking as an individual. Okay. Now I will turn it over to the virtual callers. John?
There's one virtual caller who has raised his hand, Joseph Cormier. If you could unmute yourself. Identify whether you're speaking as an individual or the designated representative of a group.
Good evening, commissioners and staff. My name is Joseph Cormier in Owings, Maryland. I'll be speaking on behalf of myself this evening. Excuse me. Commissioners, I want to express my heartfelt appreciation to the incredible people who contribute to making our county an exceptional space to live. Our county's source of pride isn't just in our geographical beauty and our infrastructure, but in our staff, from the dedicated staff at Parks and Rec to the tireless individuals who work at the Sheriff's Office and all our invaluable school system staff. It's those combined efforts of these individuals that truly make our county shine. Our county's greatest asset lies in that hard work and dedication of all staff and in the solidarity through union representation. Unions have played a crucial role in advocating for the rights, the benefits, and the fair treatment of workers across all realms of our work. It's through that collective strength of unions that our county can negotiate for improved working conditions, fair wages, and the essential benefits that we need to hire and retain staff. In order for our county to reach its fullest potential, we must actively promote and support our unions, and this means acknowledging the vital role that our unions play in ensuring the well-being and fair treatment of all staff. It means advocating for the rights of our staff to freely associate and collectively bargain. By doing so, we're going to create an environment where our county staff can thrive and lead to enhancing our services for all outcomes for residents. In conclusion, as we express our support for the budget and our appreciation for all the staff that work behind the scenes to make the budget happen, I want to recognize my union, CASE, the Calvert Association of Education Support Staff, and CEA, the Calvert Education Association, who work day in and day out to make sure that every student receives the education that they don't just deserve, but that they're federally required to be provided. So please continue to work with the superintendent and the Board of Education to ensure that all our students receive the benefits of an education that will elevate our county to the best in the state. Thank you so much.
There's one caller with last four digits, 1930, who has not raised their hand. So that's all the callers we have virtually.
All right, I would like to thank everyone for attending, and this concludes the budget public hearing for this evening. Thank you again.
So, wait a minute. Dr. Townsend joined us late. I'm going to give you an opportunity if you'd like.
Good evening, everyone, commissioners, County Administrator Willis. Thank you to everyone for the hard work to ensure that a budget is met for Calvert County Public Schools. I believe in my heart of hearts we can be number 1, 2, or 3 the next 2-3 years. I truly believe that. I don't complain. Whatever we get, we're going to get it done. I'm going to continue to advocate for finances and monies for our teachers and support workers and anyone that works in Calvert County Public Schools, but I appreciate the hard work and dedication of everyone involved, and let's continue to work together. This is Team Calvert, Calvert County. That's what I represent, so thank you so much for the opportunity.
So Dr. Townsend, earlier, before you arrived, I did thank you and Mr. Johnson for all your efforts and our hard work on the budget. It's not been easy. You're new, and it's a whole new system you've had to learn, and Blueprint has complicated that. But we really do appreciate you and Mr. Johnson's efforts to work through this budget. And as I told everybody, it's not done yet. We've still got work to do, but we've got to get through this process for now anyway.
Yes, sir. Thank you so much. It's a grind, but we're working as a team. Everyone needs to know that. Trust me, we're working as a team, and I love it, so we'll be good. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hart?
Yes, sir, Mr. President. I move that we leave the record open to receive additional public comments through the close of business on Monday, June 5th, 2023.
Second.
I have a motion and a second that we leave the record open to receive additional public comments through close of business on Monday, June 5th, 2023. Is there any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. So what that means, ladies and gentlemen, is we are going to vote on June the 6th to finalize the budget for July 1. Having a motion to
Yes, sir,
adjourn?
Mr. President. Move to adjourn.
Second. Motion and second that we adjourn. Any discussion on that motion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Thank you. I want to thank everybody for coming out this evening. We really do appreciate it.